Phil Vercoe. Phil's from UWA. My memory of Phil is he started life out delving into the rumen and all things rumen related, mainly bugs. He was under the tutelage of Dr. Reg Moyer, who was a, how do you describe him, Phil? He was a groundbreaker in rumen physiology and rumen research. And grandfather, yeah. So Phil was well trained. As you might have heard from some of his previous comments earlier, he's spent a fair bit of time dealing in the I have to read this, anti-methanegetic, well, you can probably take the idea. Anyway, basically things that reduce methane production in the rumen, because obviously that's a hot topic in the current environment to do with climate change, and ruminants are seen as the baddies. Phil spent a fair bit of time working in that environment. What he's talking about today is something else he's been working on called Beeflinks. Now, that's a partnership that he's going to talk about, but I'd just like to welcome Phil to the microphone, and thank you, Phil.
Thanks very much, Ashley. I really do appreciate the invitation to come and build some awareness about Beeflinks. I've never been given this long to talk, so I'm also excited about that, especially before lunch. Most people try and shut me up. So I'll try and stick to time, and I'll try and talk into this speaker. But yeah, no, it's a real pleasure to be here because Beeflinks is something I'm passionate with. I definitely still have my what's driving it is a passion around the rumen microbial system. So that hasn't changed, and the anti-methanogenic part of it is also a key bit to what I think is offered in the northern rangelands and the beef world up there. But the Beeflinks, I just wanted to start by saying Beeflinks came from a problem that I have with a range of things, but one thing is about research programs coming and going and disappearing, and so there's no linkage between research programs. And at the time, pivot irrigation, Rio Tinto had started putting water up through pivots on Hammersley Station, changing the landscape, and Pardue and a number of others now going down that path. Fantastic. We had rangeland self-herding practices, so behavioural-based management practices of cattle was a great research program going on around that. There was the Northern Beef Futures program, Northern CRC or CRC for Northern Australia, and a number of those things were coming to an end while pivot irrigation and huge interest in the northern cattle industry was coming into play. And so Beeflinks was an idea that I went to MLA about and the donor company, and just said, why don't we have a slightly different approach to this? Let's have a program of work where we try and coordinate the program, coordinate research. I'll explain why links is in the name in a second, but basically it's a strategic partnership. It has to be a partnership. So much of Beeflinks I'm trying to push is about the spirit of the thing as much as it is about the R&D. The R&D is crucial, but it's got to be done in a partnership because then people communicate, there's trust and all of those sorts of things. So we want a strategic partnership that accelerated adoption by bringing together representatives from across the supply chain. We had them involved from planning, they're still involved right through to hopefully practice at the end of the program, and it was definitely about a spirit of collaboration. And the links is about all of those things. It's not just about the R&D links. The R&D without the A is what happens if you don't actually have days like today. I mean, it's fantastic. There's got to be more of these days. And there probably is that I just don't attend and I should. Simple as that. But it's about, there are a number of other strategic partnerships now across the northern beef industry. There's state and federal initiatives coming out at short notice that everyone's madly trying to get proposals in for. Drought hubs, there's Less Gas, which is about methane. We've got the research councils all playing a huge role in trying to help get research out into where it matters. We've got key producer groups, researchers, producers, advisors, and of course students. I mean, I see the two award winners coming up here and speaking so clearly, so positively about the industry. You should come in and talk to my Vice-Chancellor. That'd be fantastic. A bit of positive spirit would be wonderful. So, yeah, anyway, but that's the links. That's exactly what we're trying to do. At the same time, we're trying to underpin that with R&D under a number of contracts that are coordinated by a steering committee. So a lot of the stuff that Alan was talking about, we're trying to do more R&D to get quantitative data to help support some of the concepts and the ideas and the changes that he's talking about. And I think it was Kelly who said, if you don't measure it, you don't know it. And if you don't know it, you can't manage it, in my opinion. So we developed this development committee. We had obviously UWA and MLA, we both put in cash. We had grower groups, so KPCA, Gascoyne Catchment Group, West Midland Group, MIG, DPIRD. We had a couple of producers. We had Rio Tinto, Pardue, Polytrefid, and Select Carbon, because carbon is in the game. And also Dean Revell, who is CEO of that, was the one who had been doing the rangeland self-herding work. We had a couple of workshops, and we developed a strategic framework, or a SOAP, a strategic plan on a page, and it was our roadmap for the Northern WA beef supply chain in the view of those people. And what we came up with was this program. Please don't, Beeflinks is not going to cover all of this, okay? But out of that working group, we came up with a whole stack of things that were gaps that we felt needed more data. And so we've got contracts now under these different parts of the program, not covering all of these things, but we're trying to manage it in a way so that we know what we are covering, what we're not covering. But perhaps I think the thing I'd like to draw your attention to that's also a little bit different is we've got a socio-economic project, an adoption project that we've tried to implement as early as possible into the program, and that's where we really need to engage with you guys. It's probably not me. We need that project and that program to engage, because I think we always leave it too late. We get the social scientists involved at the end of the program saying, can you just tell us what sort of impact we've had? It's like me going to a statistician after I've done the experiment, and they said, well, you stuffed up the experimental design at the start, so it's going to be tricky for us to help you. So I think that part of the issue is that we don't get the social science engaged early enough in the program, and I've challenged that group, and that's just being contracted at the moment, but I've challenged that group to also do research. It's not just taking things off the shelf. That's great, but we've got to do better than that. We've got to have a model that actually fits with the northern beef industry and all of the different nuances that go with that. Ideally, sadly, this is the one thing that at the moment we're not coordinating at all. I think this is critical. Sadly, I just haven't been able to tweak that to try and monitor changes in the production systems. We'll get that sort of information, but to me, there's no use increasing that the production without actually improving the rangelands as well. And that's a key to the whole program. It's not one or the other. We've got to do it and do both well. These were the things, I guess, I may not go into that in huge detail. These are just bits that came out of that development committee about what were our goals, the vision. It was definitely about driving an integrated and complementary R&D program for the North. And I guess down that supply chain is a big part of what MLA is about. The goal is really about getting things right for both a nutrition and a genetic component to get increases that are doable. I really believe they're doable just by getting more information so that we know what we're doing and managing it slightly better. So, I'll just keep going. That's just a little schematic, if you like, that captures what we're trying to do. It's very simple. We need to know better where animals go, what they eat when they're there, and so that we can try and better manage transitions. So we're transitioning cattle from the north down to the south. Alan mentioned it, it has come up. We've got rangeland and pivots with the new pivot irrigation. We've got a couple of methods now that are in play that might help manage cattle better at extensive levels in a slightly more intensive way, as long as we've got the information that helps us do that. And at the other end, the sustainability, being able to manage that better, manage grazing pressure better through better management and better understanding of how we can move animals and why they might move. And of course, the carbon story has been mentioned, as well as this idea of trying to get our head around the socio-economic evaluation. But the big one is, the target is to, if we can do that and understand it better, what Alan was saying about the changes in what's happening around things, and the changes in the markets, to me that's critical. We need to be able to be flexible, move, have a number of different targets. In order to do that, we actually have to know more about what we're doing and have the numbers. So if you look at the East Coast, they've got a much more integrated program and different pathways for animals to go to market. And for us, I think we've got a bit to do to head down that sort of a path. So we're using remote sensing, just to give you a sense, a bit of a schematic again of what we're doing. We've got, in this case, I've put a collar, but it's really ear tags. But we've also got intraruminal temperature devices. We're interested in heat stress. We're interested in how animals respond to different things. We know that the intraruminal temperature is a greater indicator of stress generally, not just temperature. So we want to know where they go and what's happening temperature-wise. We're also interested in, so we collect their dung, and we analyse that using a DNA metabarcoding system that enables us to get an idea of what they eat and in what proportion they're eating them. By doing that, if we can map that and actually start to understand not only what they're eating, but in what proportion they're eating, and we know their nutritional value, then we've got a much better idea of trying to manage and repair areas of the landscape, as well as things like trying to figure out how we hit this target of being carbon neutral by 2030. We'd like to get that information fed back up into the satellite so we can use the satellite systems to help us with that nutritional scope and nutritional map. And of course, there's the backgrounding program of animals coming from north to south. There's a lot that goes into that to try and help animals be better prepared for what they're faced with when they get to the south. So animals are no different to you and me. If you've got a plate of food in front of you that you've never seen before and you've got no one else around you at the table eating that food, you push it around the plate, you might sample a little bit of it, but at the end of the day, you probably push it away or you leave it. If you've got other people around you and they're all hooking in, maybe you hook in as well because you think there's something there. So these animals are coming from a rangeland environment down to a very different setting, and we're looking at what impact that has and how we can impact that in a different way and in a positive way. And then the process is that they can go from there to feedlot or straight to processors, and of course the added benefit, and Brett would be very familiar with the pivots and the various questions that are still in play around how to best use those big circles of ice cream in a rangeland setting. And so, there's a lot of work going in by Kevin Bell at Pardue and Rio as well, getting a better understanding of what grows best, what's the nutritional value of that growth, how to use it best, and how can we integrate that with rangeland. So there are massive questions, massive gaps in quantitative data that we have to put together to be able to manage things, as we're probably familiar with doing a little bit better in the south, where we've got an understanding of these things. If you don't know that stuff and you don't see the animals all that regularly, what is it that we've got to do to overcome that? Because that's what we have to do to get a better concept. I mean, as Alan mentioned, you might think you've got 700, and the 700 animals, there's 1,500. I mean, that's a very difficult thing to get your head around and be managing to targets. And we need more animals at the right spec, hitting the right spec. And to do that, we've got to get a better handle on what we're doing. And so as a process, we went through a sort of that stakeholder engagement. There are new management systems, I think, that are just coming together, but we need that coordinated. And it's not just the nutrition and grazing behaviour. Clearly, it's genotype. We had a bit of that at the start of the day too. And it's around this mosaic of feed base. And the mosaic is not just the rangeland plants. It's truth, they're a mosaic in themselves. Now we've got pivots and we've got animals going from north to south, completely different feed bases. That is a mosaic feed base. And so to understand how to put that mosaic together, you have to understand what's there. What is the nutritional map there? What is it that drives animals to go particular places? And what are the better ones doing that the other ones aren't? If you don't know that, you have a crap mosaic. If you know it, you can actually integrate it and get a better mosaic and a better outcome. But it's those two things that are actually ultimately going to help us hit those targets. Now, at the moment, we're focusing very heavily on the nutrition and grazing behaviour side because there's stuff all known about the nutritional map of the plants that are up there. We've had some great, Andrew Mitchell's book, fantastic, but it's largely about palatability. But a better description and Bible of of that area is not available. And it's great. But we need to get down to some putting some nutritional value. We've had Andrew helping us in the program already, and he's excited. And the genotypes, I know DPIRD have recently, I'm not sure where the tender is, but in the current beef program, they're going to put some weight on genotypes. And these things are the sorts of things that Alan was talking about as well, is that how do we get this better match? If we're going to have a range of markets, we have to be on top of where we're going with genetics in relation to the nutrition that's available. Those things help us with reproduction, and those things are going to help drive more animals managed in the right way to get the right specs and earlier turn-off. If we do that, we can also focus on how we do that in a way that better helps us manage the rangelands, as well as tap into this new area of emissions reduction. And I think that's something that's helping us actually spell areas of land. And of course, I'm keen on the socio-economic assessment of what that sort of thing does. And all that's our DNA. And where our focus at the moment is in the nutrition and grazing behaviour, but we've got DPIRD on the steering committee as well as all of the others, and we sit there, we meet twice a year formally, and we try and talk these things out. Education and training, essential. If we haven't got a critical mass of young people up there, good luck. Simple as that. If we do not have a critical mass of young people who are trained with where the field is going, good luck. In a nutshell, in my head, everything I do falls under this banner, G by E by M, genotype by environment by management. And all that means is you need the right plants and animals. In this case, I'm passionate about animals, but you do need the right plants. But right plants and animals in the right place, managed in the right way. And that's having information about that, and information that we're gathering is the only way that we're going to be able to start getting a system that delivers animals that match diversified markets down the supply chain. How am I going? Good. Just the project. So here's this coordinating program that's Beeflinks, that's trying to do a little bit more than just have projects sitting underneath it, but we have then got contracts underneath it that we then manage as a steering committee, and we report back to that steering committee, and hopefully then to days like this, and there's a couple of beef up forums and very difficult meeting at Coral Bay, which some of us have to go to. It's a struggle, but we get up there. And then we've got two projects under there. One's with the West Midland Group, and it's called Growing WA Backgrounding. So they're actually trying to put the picture together, and it builds from the North-South Alliance project, and there's an Easy As project, which is all about how do we do that transitioning, if you like, from the north to the south better, and various models that might be applied. We've also got a producer demonstration site that's so closely linked to that, that's engaged with producers on board, implementing different transitional strategies and gathering data about behavioural-based changes that they make to see if they can stop what is a bit of a productivity dip when you bring animals from north to south. Diet ID is the project around the dung sampling and trying to get a better understanding of what animals are eating and in what proportion they're eating them. But it's bigger than that. I'll talk about that in 2 seconds. Select Carbon is our partner with that. We've got a PhD student who they fund as part of that program. We've got a link with Pardue Station with Kev Bell up there around systems of beef production from irrigated fodder production. That's going to be through a PhD student. And there's so many things that he has his head around, but one part of that is very much related to the Wagyu and heat stress. So we'll put, at this stage, we're planning on putting the intraruminal temperature devices to try and get a sense of what their reaction and responses are, but in relation to the fodder that's being produced under the pivots. Then we've got a program, Australian Rangeland Plants for Carbon Neutral Northern Beef Value, and that's tightly linked to Diet ID. That is about, again, better understanding the nutritional value, but I can guarantee you, so Biocerula was mentioned earlier, Eremophila glabra, an Australian native plant, tarbush. Biocerula and Eremophila, it is those two plants and daylight that we've found so far out of screening 120 different species. There are others that are fitting in, but really those two reduce methane emissions from the rumen microbial fermentation more than anything else we've ever seen. Now, I know, and we haven't even tapped into all of the northern plants at this stage, I know they're unbred. The first thing that you do when you breed plants is you breed most of the secondary compounds out of it because they're not palatable. But in a mix, they're palatable, and animals will pick and choose. And so I'm sure that our northern rangelands, and southern rangelands for that matter, will be full of things that are very useful from a bioactive sense. And we haven't even tapped into that. We haven't even measured it. So that's partly what we're doing here. And of course, with the Select Carbon, they're much more interested in grazing management to help build carbon and tap into the federal funds around the credit units. And so which is great because it's giving people a reason to spell land. But at some point, you'd have to think that the area of land and the amount of forest that I think it's called in the projects will reach a limit. You do have to go to the source of the issue with ruminants to some extent, and that's methane. So at some point we're going to have to tackle that, and it'll be the combination of better grazing practices and direct anti-methanogenic sort of activity that will help us meet those sorts of targets. Big challenge in the north, but thankfully we've got a stack of rangeland plants that I think will be able to, will be useful. We've just got to figure out how best to use that. And the other one, and it wasn't a loaded question to Alan earlier about virtual fencing, but we partnered up with Rio Tinto. Sim Mathwin there was amazing. He was wonderful in the sense that it wasn't that he wouldn't take no for an answer because I wasn't saying no, but we couldn't work fast enough to satisfy how quickly I think once they have someone over the line within a mining company, they need to act, otherwise that opportunity disappears. So working on that sort of time frame versus the time frame that UWA and MLA, no criticism to MLA, is quite different. But he hung in there, and it's not actually with adjacents, which is what the Minister has made an announcement about, saying that you can now use virtual fencing for commercial purposes in the state. Fantastic, like seriously good news. And Vents, is the company we are working with on this, use exactly the same method, pretty much. Same principles, audible cue and then an electric pulse. And so they're now going through the process of trying to get the same sort of clearances as adjacents have. But ours is a research project. I'm hoping that the information that we gather is the sort of information that if someone is going to go into it commercially, probably needs to have before they launch into it in a commercial way. But I think for the northern region, that's quite different to what a lot of the virtual fencing data that's been gathered so far has been about. So I just did want to chat a little bit about those two projects. What we're dealing with is not this, it's this. That is huge diversity, ability of animals to graze and choose. They're clever. They are not stupid. They are not lawnmowers. They are mobile biochemical analysers. I can't stress that enough. If you treat them like lawnmowers, you won't get anywhere. So please, and especially up in the rangelands, and that's the beauty of the thing is that they learn and experience and then select. So that's, we don't know anything about the nutritional value of those plants. So we're going around making collections. This is just a start, but we're taking plants, key plants. We talk with the producers. We talk with people who were up there 50 years ago. Anyone we can get our hands on who'll talk to us about the sorts of plants that they think are key drivers. Buffalo grass, obviously, in Alan's mind is a key plant, and I think it is too. But there's a stack of things that make up the diet. I can tell you that for a fact. But we still don't know enough about what it is that each of those plants are contributing in a rangeland-based diet. But the animals thrive on the diversity. Normally, what you get with feed, if you look at the feed quality and methane, which is part of that CN30 issue, is that the better the quality, the greater the methane. And so what we do is we just have a lab system. We have rumen fluid that we extract from animals, and we ferment that plant material in our lab in a couple of different ways. But of the plants that we've got so far, that we've collected so far, it's just one round. We're doing it multiple seasons, multiple years. We're seeing exactly that trend. That's normal. But what we are excited about is that they're not all falling on the line. So there are some of a particular quality that have far less methane than others. And it's that scope, it's that variability that is exciting. And it's something that the industry needs to tap into. 3 minutes? Yeah. This is very, very high-tech stuff. You'll see that we've got 2 plastic spoons that we picked up at the Roadhouse because we realised we'd forgotten our sampling kit, and we go out, we get our hands, we get into that dung. We love dung. But at the end of the day, that dung goes off to France. We're hoping to sort something out here locally, but the great group in France, they do a lot of work with wildlife and looking at what those wildlife are eating by looking at a DNA approach to saying what have these animals been eating and in what proportion. So very low-tech collection device, high-tech, and actually quite a interesting bioinformatic challenge to try and put that together. But it's exciting to see what these animals are getting. Why do it? Diet composition, nutrient content of the plants equals expected performance and value of supplementary feeding. We've got to understand better why we're supplementing, when we're supplementing. If we don't know the other bits, we could be wasting our money or ill-targeted supplementation. But it's that idea of, so what we're doing, we've got series year tags, track the animals, take plant samples, take dung samples from 100 individual animals. We've got walkover weighers and trap yards, and so we'll match productivity data to where they're going, what they're eating and what proportion they're eating, the nutritional value of that feed, and we will try and put together why is it that the top 10 or 15% are doing what they're doing? Is it because they get somewhere quicker and nick off faster, or is it that they get there quicker and push everyone else out of the way? So you can also look at the dynamics of what's going on with the ear tags, not just tracking where they're going. There's swarm theory around stats that help you use that data cleverly to try and figure out what's going on from a herd dynamic perspective. Right. Virtual fencing, this is Rio Tinto. I probably should have told, but that's just the size of the collar. Poor picture, but that's it on the animal. We've got through the first stage. 20 cattle was the first stage in 5 hectares. It was great. We didn't have, the only thing is the collar flips around a little bit. We're right, we're about 3 weeks into the 100 cattle in a 500 hectare spot and using virtual fencing to move those animals. Once that's done, stop-go points all along the way. We've got 6 months with 500 cattle in a 15,000 hectare area that will manage to about 1,500 hectares. So that's the process. That's how the animal... Yep. Okay. No worries. Okay. Outcomes. What I'm hoping I can come back and talk to you guys about, management protocols for better transitioning. So I think that's what we're trying to head for. Guidelines for better nutritional management of cattle in the WA rangelands, because we'll have all of the nutritional data. The tools to help make decisions and do the management of extensive systems in a more intensive way, and certainly another awareness of a string in the bow around the carbon neutral story. Thanks, Ashley. Sorry for the run.
Thanks, Phil. Don't go away. 2 things. In 30 seconds, can you tell us what it is about Bicerula that reduces the methane output? And then the second thing is the people here, how do they sort of get involved in Beeflink?
Yeah. Okay. First one, Bicerula. So we've gone to the organic chemists, as we have with Aeromophila as well, and we've used an assay-based approach to purifying or separating compounds out of Biocerula down to a mix of compounds that are now amount to 3. As soon as we break it down into the 3 individual compounds, the activity it's nowhere near what it is with those 3 compounds. So to me, that's exciting. I am not a silver bullet person. I just can never get my head around that. So the fact that we can't break it down to a single compound that does the job, to me, is a good thing, because it means that we're probably less likely to just round up with a resistance or a manipulation in the rumen microbial ecology that adapts to that very quickly. And so the fact that the plant has that, probably not to reduce methane for humans, but the fact that it's got that, and that is a system that it uses to modify or manipulate microbes, is a good thing. It makes a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective. So it's down to 3 compounds, and the other one was Beeflinks. Yes, so like a business card, I never have one in my pocket, but I have wonderful flyers. But just get in touch with me. I don't know if my email's in here, but I'll send a flyer. And if that can go out to you guys, I would love your involvement. And the socioeconomic group, if it's okay with you guys, I'll try and make a very direct link between them and you, because our info needs to get back to you, but we need your feedback, 100%.